Hey, how's everybody doing out there? Good Saturday evening. Just out here having me a little glass bottle Coke. Shout out to everyone who enjoys a nice little glass bottle Coke. Takes me back to my childhood. Anyway, what we're going to get into today, we're going to talk a little bit about overdrive pedals. Specifically, the Maxon OD-9, or as some people know it more commonly as, the Ibanez TS808 TS9, kind of a similar beast. The TS9 has a little bit more gain. So, a little history lesson here if you didn't know. Maxon in Japan made the original Tubescreamers for Ibanez. So, you can still buy Maxon pedals today. They're great. Honestly, they're the Tubescreamer sound. So, if you're looking for that kind of classic Stevie Ray Vaughan, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, I mean, there's a million guys that play Tubescreamer. There's a few that come to mind. Also gets a good Robin Trower. So, one thing about these pedals, some people just leave them on all the time. I either have them on my board or I don't. And I'll explain here why. So, what we got right now is just a clean signal. Strat here. JTM 45. There's a little reverb in the loop. It's Tech 21 Boost R.V.B. So here's a little bit of the clean signal. Neck pickup. So, one thing about Tubescreamers, so many people love them, some people hate them. I'm going to show you why you might not like one. So, right after my guitar, a little talk about signal chain here. This is the first thing in your signal chain. Your guitar is the very first thing in your signal chain. From there, the chord, it goes down into an Isle of Tone, Haze 67 fuzz. It's got some old Mullard, I think it's 214s, NKTs or NTKs. I'm not real great with all the little serial number monikers, but anyway, right after that is a Wilson V2 wah. It's set on the Italian Gen. The reason I use the Italian Gen setting is it has this really nice upper mid-range honk, almost like it boosts the gain. It gets a real vocal quality. You just got to be careful. It can be terribly bright if you don't use that correctly. Next to that, the Sabbadius Funky Vibe. It's the 69 version. I use the 69 and also the Fillmore East. The difference there, I would notice, the 69 mid, like the EQ is set very, I would say, clear, like maybe a little bit more mid-range, upper mid-range presence, so it's maybe perceived a little bit brighter, a little bit clearer. I would say the pulse on it is maybe not as extreme as the Fillmore East. I think the Fillmore East has a little bit more bass, and it might be perceived as a little bit more dark, but I think that could be the intensity of the low end coming through. And actually, I feel like the Fillmore East might give you just a little bit more thickness in your signal, in your vibe settings. So from that, I've got the volume up on that at about 8.5. Intensity on the Funky Vibe is just after 5. Next to that is the expression pedal for the Funky Vibe, and then I have a Maxon OD-9. And like I was saying about the Maxon OD-9, it is essentially the TS9 Ibanez. I mean, it's circuitry, it's the same, pretty much. I have the, it looks like I have the drive at, it's about 2/3 of the way up, the tone's about 2/3 of the way up, and the level is cranked all the way up. Now, going back to what I was talking about, reasons you may or may not like a Tubescreamer. Got a clean signal, we just play a little bit. Clear, okay? So, I'm going to kick on a fuzz. Now, the thing about fuzz, you really rarely use them all the way up on 10. It's just, it's like a big woolly mammoth crashing through a, you know, like a tea set shop somewhere or something, you know, just like taking out all the fine shine, taking out all the glassware. It's too woolly. Like, it's almost violin-like, but it's cool in some contexts, but almost too much. So what you really want to do is you want to roll off your volume a little bit. So just take some of that off. It's about 8, just a hair past 8, and it kind of takes some of that off a little bit. Off. The fuzz makes your sound incredibly fat. I don't know how well it translates to the recording, but it's like everything is gigantic. Like I can hear mid-range, low frequencies, high frequencies. It's all present, all encompassing, all surrounding. Now, I'm going to kick on this Tubescreamer and just listen to what you just, okay, you just listen to that. So maybe we're gonna roll it down to about the same where it was at with the Haze 67 Fuzz. So. Alright, so I'm gonna kick off this OD-9 real quick. Now, what I notice here in the room, I don't know if it's translating the same way onto the recording. The Tubescreamer, the OD-9, the Maxon OD-9 pedal, it's kind of taking that all big and encompassing, I can hear everything, and it's kind of like bringing it back into where it's kind of this consolidated, compressed sound. And you might really like that, or you might not. So that might be a reason to either use or not use a Tubescreamer. But usually if you're going to use a Tubescreamer, you're not just going to get your gain from your Tubescreamer. So one cool trick you can use, and this will get you more of like a Robin Trower or a, you know, like a Kenny Wayne Shepherd type thing, where when you put the Tubescreamer like very last, which means, you know, there's a cable going from the Tubescreamer back into the amp. What that does is it kind of simulates the clipping or the overdrive of your amp. You know, I'm in a house. I mean, it's loud, but it's not like stage volume at like, you know, the O2 Arena or something like that. You know, it's definitely helping push what's inherently in the OD-9. So here's what I'm talking about. Going back to the OD-9, I'm gonna kick it back on. It's all the way on 10. Okay, so I'm gonna kick on the funky vibe. One cool thing about the funky vibe is you can, there's a true bypass. So you can use or not use the preamp of the funky vibe, which this is without the preamp. This is me kicking the preamp on. So off, this is off. All on 10. This is with it on. Whoop. I think it's best utilized when you use the preamp of another pedal to kind of push the Tubescreamer. I think that's the best way to use it. Plus, this amp is just slightly overdriven. I always recommend that with really any amp, even if you're not fully cranking it up, just get some tube, you know, overdrive, some distortion. You know, these are KT66s. It's got, you know, the tube rectifier. I think it's a 5A, whatever it is. It's GZ something. But anyway, the point of pushing the Tubescreamer is basically you're kind of filling in where you don't have the amp cranked. It's like 2 stages of gain, but you're kind of... Just listen to this portion here. So, again... It sounds kind of overdriven, but it's like almost like not where it needs to be. You see how much bigger like the low end is? You kind of get that Stevie Trower, Kenny Wayne Shepherd thing where it's pushing not just your signal but your frequencies further. That's why I feel like if you're going to use a Tubescreamer, you should probably boost it on, you know, earlier in your signal change just a little bit. So we'll try out some, you know, Kenny-isms or some Trower-isms here. I'm not really going to try and play any specific song, but, you know, we'll see how it goes. On the neck pickup, got the Tubescreamer on. So, real quick, one thing that you'll notice when you use a Tubescreamer before, or I should say after your Univibe wants a pretty clean signal. So this is, you know, here's the fuzz. Like I said, you need to roll this down a little bit. We're going to kick on the Univibe. It's going to kind of really distort the signal. Some might like that sound, but I want to roll it down to about 8 again. This, I think, is key to getting a lot of Stevie and Jimmy tones, is rolling the volume off to about somewhere between 6 and 8, maybe even 9. Just depends on the guitar and the pickups and, you know, the pots themselves, because they're all a little bit different. They don't all read 250K in this point. You can have some that are 240, 260, whatever. Going back to the Tubescreamer. Doesn't matter what I do with the volume. The signal is not affected in the Univibe, which is, you might want it that way. Some people like it that way. full control over the univibe at any volume. One thing I'll notice with the OD-9, the Tubescreamer types, you do lose some clarity, especially when it comes to like single note runs. If you want a more descriptive sound, I recommend you go with a fuzz. Like, you get pros and cons with both things, so think of like overdrive pedals like a TS9 or, you know, some type of Tubescreamer as, you know, a means to really boost what you already have going. Don't rely on it as your main source of the sound of your amp. If you're using a tube amp, first of all, find a way to crank it up. I mean, you can spend all the money in the world you want on attenuators and volume pedals and baffling and plexiglass shields, all that shit. Really, if you can turn your amp up, that's what you really want. That's the sound. There's something that happens with speaker distortion. You have to get the speaker cones moving and vibrating to get that tone. So no matter what pedal you use, it can be an accessory to that. It can make it sound great, but at some point you have to have enough volume to push it. I mean, IRs are great, but you know, there really isn't a substitute, especially when you're in the room for it, or in the room with it. So, just the last few things about Tubescreamers. Why should I own one? Why should I not own one? Well, the Tubescreamer does a lot of cool things. So, it's kind of timeless. Like, you know, it's been around since it was either the late 70s, early 80s. I don't know the exact year it was made. I remember the TS-808 was first. I did have a hand-wired one. It was pretty good, very clear, crystalline, I would say. It was almost like a clean boost. The TS9 and the Maxon OD-9, I feel like are some of the best bang for your buck if you're going to do a Tubescreamer. The Tubescreamer is great for if you're going to play like metal. It really does that thing of where it compresses and kind of puts everything right there. As long as you want that, you know, I think it's best for rhythm playing. Your Tubescreamer is best for getting you some really thick rhythm tones. If you're not really, you know, trying to do super, you know, intricate, dynamic volume swells and stuff like that. Because you do lose a little bit of definition with that. So, other reasons to own them, well, they're cheap. I mean, there's some pedals out there. I think I might have said it, you know, but there's pedals out there that are $500, $1,000. You go into vintage, $1,500, $2,000 up. I mean, you know, they still make them. They still sound great. If you're a beginning guitar player, one of the best setups you can have. It's super easy. Get a Ibanez TS9 or a Maxon OD-9. Get you a little Fender Blues Junior, a Strat, and a couple cables. A wah pedal if you want, and you've got a great gig amp. You know, everything nowadays is mic'd. And if you're at home, you know, you can turn your volume down pretty low and get some pretty killer tones out of them at low volumes. That's another reason people use them. I'm talking about stage volume with overall, whoa, that sounds great, but when you're talking about being at home, you know, I used to live in an apartment, you can't always crank up like you're playing, you know, the LA Forum or something. You know, you really gotta like utilize things like Tubescreamers. And then that's where, like I said, attenuators can come in and IRs and stuff. if you're going for low volume, overdrive pedals, IRs, various pedals and attenuators can really get you really close. But if you're really trying to get a tone that you hear like on, you know, the radio or your favorite, you know, studio album or live album, you're hearing an amplifier cranked up. There's really no substitute for that. So that's a reason to own a Maxon OD-9. That's a reason to own pedals in general. You know, shout out to all the great pedal makers out there. You guys are doing great things. I mean, especially like, I mean, good or bad to my credit rating, but man, I've bought so many awesome pedals and guitars, and it's just fun. I think the reason to own pedals and the reason to get into music is, you know, express yourself. You know, people are gonna say what they will. Don't worry about them. You don't pay the troll, or the troll toll, I should say. Don't pay the troll toll. And how do you pay it? You give them attention. That's what they want. As soon as you acknowledge their existence, they're on it. Don't worry about them. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to wrap it up. I kind of went on a little long, but if you have any questions, feel free to, you know, comment. I am a guitar instructor. I like to help people out. I'm all about helping musicians, helping people become better people as well. You know, life's not great sometimes, but, you know, we can all be better people. With that, I'll just say, hey, have a good rest of your evening. Have a good rest of this month. We're almost in April. Peace out.